Good morning, Instagram. I hope everyone can hear me so far. Here we are in Scotland, and welcome from me, Colour Sergeant Jos Tiley. I hope you're all well out there and keeping safe. So, welcome to the last in the third series of the RMBS Masterclasses, given by myself, like I say, Colour Sergeant Jos Tiley. A little bit about myself. I'm one of the horn players up here in Scotland band, so for all you that are from elsewhere, welcome from Scotland. So that's good. What we're going to talk about today is not only the good old French horn. What we're going to talk about as well is we're going to dwell on quite a bit of psychology. Why do I think this is important? What does this have to do with it? Well, the title of the whole piece is The Myth of Talent and the Power of Purposeful Practice. So, what's all this about? Too often I see things like the Masterclass, or we'll go to Mountbatten Festival of Music, and people will comment, my goodness, how talented these people are. And my crux of this argument is that talent does not exist. Okay, why is this important? Because that puts, false pressure on people who haven't reached maybe the standard that we have, and I'm not pretending we're anything special, but maybe haven't reached that standard, and it feels like the goal may be unattainable. And I want to show to you today that the goal is attainable, and anyone that sets the correct mindset can do that. So, the way I'd like to run it today, and I can see loads of people joining, so hello to Ashley Forshaw, I think I know you, Ryland Thomas, and all the Kings. So, welcome to all that's joined so far. The way that we're going to run it is, I'm going to give a brief biography about myself, what I've done, but I want to dwell on certain highlights that have changed the way that perhaps has altered my mindset and made me think in a slightly different way when we're talking about music. After that, I want to talk about 3 books in particular. The first one is The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters, and I want to talk briefly after that about Steve Peters and Dave Brailsford. I want to talk about Mindset by a lady called Dr. Carol Dweck. And I want to talk about a book called Bounce by a former table tennis player called Matthew Syed. After that, we're going to hopefully join all these things together and talk about how to practice correctly, how to achieve your aim in getting better. Perhaps you've been stable at a level for quite a while and you just feel like you're really having problems progressing. I want to deal with that with you, and I want to show you how it is possible to push yourself that little bit further. And it may be that you're putting the correct amount of hours in, but I want to show you how to train that little bit smarter. And by training smarter, we achieve more for less. And that's what we're all after, isn't it? That's the real bang for buck, more for less. So, welcome to all those that are still joining, who've got their Deca Cake 55 and Lizzie Conridge and GRW 15. Hello to you all. Right, so I'll get straight into how I started in music, what made me join the Royal Marines, and then how eventually becoming an instructor, and I know a couple of other people that have been instructors that have given these masterclasses, Colours Smith being one, Colours Nick West being the other. It really influences the way that you think about music and the way that you want to change or put your interpretation of your experiences into the way that other people do their business. So, how did I start making music? I was lucky enough to have 2 very musical parents. They were professional musicians. So they wanted me to learn music from a very early age. They wanted me to learn the violin and the piano. I flatly refused to do that even as a youngster. But I did eventually start playing the French horn when I was 7. And I went through the same system that nearly everyone else does. And what's that? Very simple. the peripatetic system, and I started in a school wind band and did local orchestras. No change from anyone else. Was I special? No, I was not. I was about as average as everyone else was at that time, or those people that start music at that age. Okay, and I carried on up the system normally, and then the weird thing for me is I changed to playing trumpet after about 3 or 4 years, and I played trumpet for about 7 or 8 years. That was quite a good grounding for me, moving from French horn to trumpet, in as far as two things happened that were quite interesting that have helped me do the things I do now. One was joining a brass band, and that allowed me to concentrate on real specifics. You know, playing in brass band contesting, you've got to be accurate, and you've really got to look at the small nuances of music. So that was useful. I also ended up playing in a big band for a while. That was good, because as a French horn player now, I don't play a lot of jazzy rhythms, but that taught me, one, how to read some jazz rhythms. Two, it taught me a love of people like Buddy Rich, Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, and we still do stuff like the Gil Evans arrangements of Miles Davis to this day, the 10-piece stuff, which is absolutely incredible. So, normal system, and then I was playing the trumpet. I went to take my grade 8 at about 14. I failed. Not afraid to say that. I retook it 6 months later and passed. I moved on back onto the horn and decided that that's where I wanted to stay. I was happy with doing that. The year before I was due to finish school, I decided that my parents obviously said, look, you've got to make a decision. What are you going to do? I was a fairly academic child, not exceptionally so, but I love being outside. I love mountaineering, I love climbing, I love running, I love camping, being out and about. I loved all that stuff. So I was really interested in a career in music as well. And so it was combining two things. My father had been in the RAF, so the first choice would be to go into the RAF band. I went on work experience with them and really enjoyed myself. I still got some great friends that are in the RAF music services. And that was nice, but I wanted to have a look around, see what else there was. I went to the army, and I, as a young man, said I would like to join the parachute regiment band because I liked a bit of adventure. I was told at that stage that I would have to join the regiment and then the band later, but even as a 15-year-old I thought perhaps that wasn't the best course of option for me, and definitely my parents were flat out against it. As happens sometimes in life, you're going along a path and you don't know what's happening next, and then something happens that changes the direction in which your life takes. And that happened in that year after I'd been to see the RAF. And welcome to Brian Walker. I'll be chatting about you later, Brian. Like I said, something happens. You know, I'd been with the RAF, I'd had a chat to army guys, and I didn't discount any of those. I thought it was an interesting career. I didn't know anything about the Royal Marines, but one thing happened that changed the path of my life. That path changed when I found out there was a concert in a place called Middlesbrough in the northeast of England, where I'm originally from. And I went there, and it was the Deal Band. And I went and listened to the concert, and it started off great. Corps of drums. There was a great opening fanfare that I still remember. Weirdly enough, this was from 1985. I can remember at least 6 pieces of music from that concert, so it must have made an impression. Welcome Hornblower and Georgia 15. It must have made an impression. The first piece of music they started out with, and I don't know if some of my friends here might remember that, a couple of my old shipmates might. The opening fanfare was a fanfare by a gentleman, director of music, former director of music at that time, Lieutenant David Cole, and it was Ark Royal. And I thought, crikey, this is pretty good. And they did the chord drums. I'd never seen the chord drums before, thought it was really entertaining. And then an overture. They did some solos, one of which was the great Colour Sergeant John Yates playing La Mandolinata, and that was exceptional musicality. But that wasn't what blew me away. What blew me away was the 2 pieces that came around the end of the first half. The first of which was Rocky Fanfare, and Rocky Fanfare absolutely changed my life, weirdly enough, and we still play it to this day. And it's, for those of you that know it, it's great. As a brass player, it's a brass player's dream. It starts off with a single cornet and blows up into everyone giving it as much as they can. It's a fantastic piece of music, and that really caught my imagination. The musicality, the enthusiasm, the fun that these guys had making music it blew me off the scale. The second piece was another piece by Lieutenant David Cole, and that was Rock Fantasy. And that was it. I was sold. I heard those two pieces and I knew what I wanted to do. So it's strange how these things have a way of just shaping what you do in your life. I obviously took myself down to the careers office and looked into joining up, and I did all the normal processes and eventually joined up in September 1987. Going through basic training wasn't easy, as perhaps everyone else would tell you. Was I good? No. Was I bad? No. I was the perennial grey man. I hid in the middle of the pack. I was a very young 16-year-old. Didn't quite know what I was doing, but I managed to get away with it. I really enjoyed it though. It was hard, but I really enjoyed it. I loved being in with the friends that I made within the troop. The second term, actually, I found far more difficult in a way, and a lot of people do. That transition from basic training into music training is a very difficult one, and I got given my horn. I got given a place to go and practice in Deal, and you get stripped back to the basics of the things that you've been doing wrong, and I had plenty that I was doing wrong, and it can be slightly demoralising to start again at the beginning. But as I learned later, a lot later as an instructor, if you don't get those foundation blocks right, you're scuppered from the outset. So it's like Neville parlance there. You're not doing well from the outset. You need to start those basic building blocks really well. So yet again, I progressed for about a year and everything was going well. I didn't excel, I didn't do badly, everything was going well. And that takes me through to term 6 when something happened. It was the summer term of 1989. It's weird how these things really stick in your mind. And I got a knock on the door of where I was practicing, and it was my instructor, a gentleman called Taff Liley, Corporal Taff Liley. And he said to me, Jos, staff band need a French horn player, and they've got 3 gigs coming up and a couple of beat retreats. Would you like to go? And I was sitting there going through some music, possibly not the most beneficial practice session I've ever had. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So off I took myself to staff band over in Deal. I wandered over there, not afraid to say, mega nervous. Okay, I was really nervous to sit down there. Eyes like saucers, sitting amongst some absolute legends of musicians and some absolute fantastic people, some of which I still keep in contact with to this day. But I wandered into the horn section. I sat between 2 gentlemen. On my left, the first horn player was Sergeant Brian Walker, Billy, and it's nice to see Billy here today. On my right, the third horn player, a gentleman called musician Andy Schofield, colloquially known as Sizzler. And these 2 pair changed the way I think about music, without a doubt. Yet again, this was the second tangent that I had. Never have I sat within a section that has inspired, encouraged and brought me on, and that just encouraged me to go that extra step from being average or a middle of the pack to someone who really wanted to play horn well. So what did they do? I've got to be honest, they had a lot of fun, and it was sitting within a section that not just did music with a very serious face, but it was sitting with musicians who really had fun. Half the time they talked about making homebrew, having curries, but the rest of the time it was about music. And certainly when the conductor raised the baton and went like that, they were switched on, and it was great to watch. It was really inspirational. The second thing that happened at exactly the same time was there was the gentleman, if you remember what I said about the concert in Middlesbrough in 1985, that lieutenant came back to deal to training, and he was the assistant director of music training, David Cole, and he swept up training band and let us play all his fantastic arrangements. And yet again, it was that spirit of enthusiasm that really instilled you to excel. And that's what I want to try and get to you today. Enthusiasm, passion, and the desire to excel is really, really, really important. Okay, so I passed out later that next term, beg your pardon. September 89 was obviously a bit of an odd term, and I won't dwell on that. But what I do remember from that term is sitting with Billy and Sizzler, and we played through some excellent music. I remember Thievish Magpie, La Lesienne, just to name two, Fidelio, another one. Those are etched on my mind, sitting in between those pair and then forcing me to be better and better and better. I passed out later that year and went straight to CTC band, went to Norway, the Arctic, for a month or 2 months probably, and then got sent straight to Fleet Band. Yet again, that was a different type of place. I was really lucky enough to travel the world for about 4 years with Fleet Band. The highlights of that bit really would be 3 weeks we spent in Hong Kong shutting down HMS Tamar, but also the Gulf War conflict in Up Granby. My first chance to do an operation, and it was everything that you'd think about an operation would be. So that was important. 94-ish, I got sent to Scotland band, and that was good. My chance to be in a section, start to lead a section, and that's when you start to earn your money. You're not sitting in the middle of the pack, you're sitting at the top of the pack and you're having to work, okay? And that's when it changes from being you having to just play to it's you and no one else. And you've really got to help yourself, you've got to help your section. And so all those that information that I'd learned from Billy and Sizzler and other people that really started to soak into me. And I tried to pass that on to the younger guys that were sitting with me. I did 2 great trips at that time, 4 months on HMS Fearless in the Caribbean, and then 3 months back to the Caribbean on HMS Ocean, when we ended up being in Belize, Nicaragua, Honduras, doing some hurricane relief stuff with Hurricane Mitch. Normal route, same as everyone else. I've been promoted corporal. I did my seniors, my M1s, and I know that's been talked about by Lieutenant Griffin, those command courses. And then 2002-03 was an odd one, the second Gulf War, and also Operation Fresco. So I found myself for nearly a year I was commanding a Green Goddess around the streets of Grangemouth and Falkirk with my good friend, a driver called Lance Corporal Matthew Ford, a commando, and who unfortunately lost his life in Jugham Fort 5 years later. After that, I was sent to Faslane to be a volunteer band instructor. Yet again, great chance to progress. Not playing the French horn, but learning about music. That chance to learn about music from a different way really helps. Conducting, arranging, a little bit of composition, and you managing people. I learnt a lot on that phase. Moving forward, where were we? That's 2006, back to the band, and then more or less straight after a year, out to Afghanistan and Commando Logs Regiment for about a year and a half in Logs, and then out in Afghanistan. I know Colour Sergeant Smith, Sergeant Hall and Captain Hairsign, they were all baby musicians when I took them out for there. I was the colour sergeant in charge. So times have changed now. We're all getting older, I suppose. Back from there, a great trip out to, where did we go? Australia for a month. So that was good. After that, more trips, and the next thing, Operation Grit Rock. Out to Ebola, Sierra Leone to deal with the Ebola crisis. Back after that, we did a great gig, and one of those gigs that stick in your mind for a while. And that was, if you allow me to share a photo, there we go. Rugby World Cup 2015. Sorry for that slight delay. And that's us, the horn players and the trumpet players, standing around the Rugby World Cup ball in 2015. That was an amazing gig. What did we learn from that? Well, we learned that the crowd singing Sweet Caroline were absolutely amazing and rocked the house. We also learned that we didn't have time to rehearse marching on around that rugby ball while 80,000 people were watching us, so we had to cuff it on the night. But it did work, and what amount of fun it was. So just that was a good day at the office. Okay. And back to me. So after that, more or less, I was sent, a couple of years after that, I was sent to be an instructor. And I want to spend a quick while talking about being an instructor. So when I was sent there, you do an exam called the DTTT course before you join, and that's to train you to become an instructor. That's a really good course and teaches you a lot of things. I learned one book on there that we're going to deal with today is called Mindset by Carol Dweck. But the two other books we're going to deal with I'd read at the same time. To cut a long story short, I was doing a run at the time, and it was a 35-mile ultra run. Basically, I'd always wanted to achieve being a better runner and cyclist and all those good things. And I eventually got a friend of mine, a coach, to help me. And what I learned was about a lot of goal setting. So this goal setting really took part in my mind, and how we can introduce goal setting into the trainees. And I certainly tried to do a lot of that at the school. So what we're going to do now is move swiftly on. You've probably heard enough about me, and we're going to talk about the myth of talent and the power of purposeful practice. Just one reminder, Corporal Amy Phillips will be on directly after this, so if you want to talk directly about recruiting, Amy is the girl to help you out. So, the chimp paradox. The paradox being that the chimp itself belongs to you, but often works against you, sometimes with, sometimes against. Quickly share a photograph. Okay, 7 parts to the brain. We're not going to deal with the occipital, the temporal, the cerebellum, or the stem. So look please at, down here, the frontal, so you say because it's the front of your head, the limbic, our good friend the chimp, and the parietal. Now, why are these important? Because they have a real impression about what you do making music. The frontal first. This is you when you wake up in the morning, you have your cornflakes, and you're thinking about playing the horn. When you're thinking about doing that, it may be that you're sitting down there thinking, what am I going to do today? Your human will make some rational, logical decisions. Those decisions will be, right, I'm going to have an hour's practice. I'm going to split it into 3 groups. My first will be 20 minutes when I'm going to deal with a warm-up. I'm going to do 20 minutes when I deal with flexibilities, high notes, low notes, all that good stuff. I'll do 20 minutes at the end, and that will be that study that I need to prepare for my teacher next week and the piece I'm working on. So that is your human speaking to you, and it's clear, it's logical, it's rational. Now, sometimes your chimp gets involved. Now your chimp, your limbic system, works 5 times quicker than your human, okay? 5 times quicker. So if we don't stop the chimp working, often the chimp will start chipping in with ideas and odd thoughts to our head, okay? We don't want this. Now, the chimp, the difference with the chimp and the human is, the chimp, although the human deals with rational, logical behaviour, the chimp deals with emotions and feelings, and by dealing with emotions and feelings, it makes impressions. Now, because it often jumps to conclusions. Because this brain is so ancient and it's still the old mammalian part of the brain, it still thinks it lives in the jungle. Because it lives in the jungle, it likes being in its home, that little ordered space. It doesn't like wandering around the jungle because there's still leopards out there, and it's slightly nervous, okay? Because it's slightly nervous, it uses the fight, flight and fright mechanism, and it'll sometimes chip in with things to you when you don't really want it, okay? So remember that, emotions, feelings, it still lives in the jungle, and the chimp loves external praise, and it likes its self-esteem to be validated. It's easily judged and it hates criticism, and really all it deals with wants, needs and desires, and this is sometimes really unhelpful. Now, to illustrate this from a musical point of view, there's a great video on YouTube at the moment of the President's own band, and it's the Trumpet Masterclass. Now, the Trumpet Masterclass, it's got a gunnery sergeant there, and he's sitting and he's doing some great warm-ups, and he's talking about his warm-up technique. And he's got a little piece of plastic piping that he blows into, and he's demonstrating relaxed air and says how that's the best way to start the day. He also then picks up his trumpet and puts his trumpet to his lips. So he's relaxed air, trumpets to the lips, and he splits the first note, okay? It's not the fact that he splits the first note that's important, it's what he says directly afterwards. He says, I took a breath in, and just before I put my trumpet to my lips, I could feel a voice in my head saying, you better not split this. Now, I admire two things about that. One, the humility that he had to leave that in, but two, also the fact that he was saying to us that thought that everyone has had every moment, not every moment, but a lot of moments you put your horn, your trumpet, whatever you play to your lips. Is this going to speak? Sometimes your little chimp is just whispering in your ear saying, don't split it, don't split it, don't split it. And what happens? You split it. Okay, so basically, how did we get to this stage? How did we realise about the human and the chimp? So it was a guy called Phineas Gage in the 19th century. Phineas Gage was a navvy on the American railroads. He had a big iron rod. He used to tamp down explosives, blow the explosives, and that would clear a way for the railway. Phineas Gage was picked because he was sober, because he was clean living, and because he was a God-fearing man. Basically, he was as straight as a die. One day, he made a mistake. Someone distracted him. He tamped in his iron rod. The explosives exploded, and the iron rod went through his cheek, up out the frontal part of his head, and this removed the frontal lobe of his brain. It also made him have a particularly bad day at the office. Okay, but he survived it, and there's many photos of Phineas Gage around. What happened next is very important. He'd lost his frontal lobe, he'd lost his human. What controlled him after that was his chimp, his his limbic system. With that limbic system running his head, he was all emotions. So it's fair to say, after that moment, Phineas Gage did not go to church, was not clean living, and used to swear a bit and drink a bit and was a bit of a womanizer. Basically, his chimp took over his brain, and this is what we're talking about today. Lastly, the parietal system, and we're going to move swiftly on this. The parietal system is the computer. Now, it runs 20 times quicker than the human, or 4 times quicker than the chimp. Remember, human 1, chimp 5, computer 4 times quicker than the chimp, 20 times quicker than the human. The parietal system deals with all that important stuff, the stuff that you automate. If I'm writing an email and I'm going to start the email, Dear Sir, that's my human thinking what the words are. I don't think how to spell, the computer does the spelling for me. If you're a horn player and I ask you to play a scale, if it's a scale you know, your human will think that's a scale, your computer will then play the scale. You don't need to think about that, okay? And that's really important. what we're trying to get at here is to miss out the chimp. If we miss out the chimp, we've done gone a long way to making our performing more safe, more secure. Where are we? Right. So let's think about the chimp again. Let's think about a grade exam. You've done a grade exam, you're sitting at your kitchen table, and an envelope comes through from the associated board. You read it, you open it, and your chimp starts chipping up, doesn't it? And you read it, and suddenly you read on it 96% fail. And your world falls down. Our friend comes back. What can we do to stop our friend chipping in, the chimp? You can do 3 things, ladies and gentlemen, 3 things. Firstly, exercise the chimp. Secondly, box the chimp. Thirdly, feed it a banana. So, how do we exercise it? So if we're in this position where we've got that grade exam, it might be a catastrophic failure for us, or we might perceive it to be a catastrophic failure. How do we make it better? Well, firstly, you let the emotions out. You can't do anything before you've got rid of that. So exercising the chimp is getting rid of everything. Once you've got rid of it, and you make sure you got rid of it all, if that means you go running around the block for a half hour until it's all out of your system, go and do that. Box it. How do we box it? We deal with the human part of our brain now. We talked a bit about logic. So imagine me failing my grade 8, I told you about that. Give yourself those things. 96%. Right, okay, I've only got 4% to make up. Right, I failed my B flat minor scale. Okay, I can make that right today. And that takes 20 minutes. That's a point there, gone. So if you understand that, that's an easy fix. Reasoning with your chimp is an easy thing to do. Lastly, feed it a banana. How do we do that? At that point, I've had my breakfast, I've found out I'm a failure, I've gone for a run, I've got it out of my system. I've reasoned, boxed it, then say to it, right, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes learning that scale. After that, I'm going to go outside and have a play for a bit. Whatever you're going to do, whatever you want to do, watch Netflix, do whatever you want, I don't care. But throw the chimp a bit of a banana. I'll just want to give you another quick example of the interaction between human, chimp and the parietal computer system. I want to give you one example, 2 different ways. Day 1. Day 1, you're there. Day 1, it's a lovely day outside. You've had a great night's sleep and you're wandering your way to your teacher, and your teacher welcomes you into his house or wherever you're going to do it. He says, how are you doing today? Look, just do a bit of playing, and after the end of the playing, give me a quick C major scale. So you do your warm-up, smash C major 1 octave. I guarantee at that point, your chimp will not be involved in that part of your day. Your human will say, everything's good, nothing to worry about. It will go straight to your computer. I don't need to think C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's inputted all the way into my computer, and because it works 20 times, or beg your pardon, 4 times quicker than my chimp, 20 times quicker than my human, it will be an automatic reaction. So that's why that works. The better that we can automate music, automate it into the computer, the better it is. Now, I'll give you option 2. It's a rubbish day. You've had a rubbish night's sleep. It's raining outside as you wander to your teacher's studio. He or she is in a terrible mood. They shout at you straight away, I hope you're going to do better than you did last week. That was absolutely appalling last week. Right, just get your French horn out, and I want B flat minor, melodic, 3 octaves now. At this point, your chimp, I guarantee, will perk in again, and it will be really upset. You can try with all the logic you want by saying B flat minor melodic, that's easy, it's the relative minor of D flat major. You can say that till you're blue in your face. Your chimp now will be rattling around. There's nothing you can do at this point to escape it. Okay, so all you can do now is hopefully take it back down, de-escalate over the course of that lesson. But once it's agitated, it's going to take a while to get off. The trick is not to get it escalated into that point where the chimp really takes control. We do not want that. So it's really important to be in control of our emotions when we're dealing with this, and remain flat and logical when we're doing it. Now, it's important to say that sometimes we can't always automate procedures. If we can't always automate procedures, sometimes things are going to go awry. I'll give you a quick example. This year's MFM, I sat on fourth horn because I'd been away doing a lot of other things, and I didn't want to sit on first. I just wasn't up to the job, really, in all honesty. Sometimes we're not. So I sat on fourth, but I was enjoying myself, propping up the section there, blasting out the low notes, really enjoying myself. Until the guy in charge of the section, Doug, came to see me and said, Jos, would you mind doing the Vienna Philharmonic Fanfare? And of course I said yes. Didn't really think anything more of it. And then the truth came out further down the line. Okay, we were standing in the gods, there was cameras on us, there's no music, I didn't know the piece, I didn't know how it fit, and it was the first thing that anyone was ever going to play, that everyone going to hear at the Albert Hall. So sometimes you have to take control of that situation. Taking control of that situation meant being really focused on the way that you learn something. By that I mean reasoning with your chimp. It's easy for your chimp at that point to say, this is going to have a catastrophic end point. It's not. Break it down into what you can do. I knew the piece wasn't hard. I knew it was less than 32 bars long. I knew it had, once I'd seen the piece, a bottom note of B flat, a top note of E flat, and that it started on a D. So this point is exercising the chimp. I'm reasoning with it all the time. Okay. Now, I went out that evening for a quick lemonade with some friends. All the way through that evening, I was fingering the way through that solo. D, C, E flat, C, B flat is the opening notes. Still know it now, but I'd also trained myself to hear what that D was. That was the critical note. That was the note that started it. Mess that up, it doesn't go well from the start. So let's have a look what happened at that point. Is it going to play? It's not going to play. That's all right, we can move on from there. However, if you YouTube it, Vienna Philharmonic Fanfare MFM 20, you can see it in action. Okay, moving on. We've talked about the chimp. Let's have a quick look at mindset, time 11:37. So, two different types of mindsets. There's a fixed mindset and there's a growth mindset. If we look here, fixed mindset is the one we want to stay away from, and that's the goal is only to look clever. You don't value effort, and your reaction to failure is to give up. That's pointless. That doesn't help anything in the way we do. Vienna Philharmonic Fanfares, come late. So, quick snippet there of Vienna Philharmonic Fanfare. I apologise there for the amount of time that took to load. So, there you go. Back to mindset. The other mindset we can have is the growth mindset, and this is desperately important. The growth mindset is that you value learning. It's not about what you're achieving, what you achieve at the end point, it's the journey there. You've got to be involved and you've got to enjoy the effort. Okay, so sometimes that effort of learning should be a real boon. And your reaction to failure is not, that's catastrophic, that's an end point. It's the start point. Failure, it seems like a very hard word. Okay, and it is. But really, failure is that start point. I think sports players do really well with failure. And so I want to have a quick think about people like the Williams sisters. Their longevity is down to their reaction to failure. When they fail, they don't get on the ground, they don't cry, they don't give up. A la people like John McEnroe, fixed mindset. You've also got Tiger Woods. Andre Agassi was a good one. He reasoned that if he hit 2,500 balls a day, he'd hit 17,500 balls a week, he'd hit over nearly 1 million balls a year. What was that? That was that continuing desire to get better and better and better. Another thing to think about perhaps is the way that NASA deals with astronauts. NASA hires astronauts. It will not hire an astronaut that has a 100% success rate. It only hires people that have had a proven track record of failing, recovering from failure, and getting better. Okay, so that's a useful thing perhaps to think about. If you think about, perhaps you watched on Netflix recently, Michael Jordan thing, The Last Dance. He's got a great quote. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career, lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So hopefully that's made you think about failure and success, that I think the two things are interlinked. If we think about failure not as an end point, but as a start point, that should really influence the way we think and value that learning process. Please do that. That's super, super important. So, talent. Moving quickly onto that. Talent was tried to be proven in the early 90s by a Swedish psychologist called Anders Ericsson. And Anders Ericsson followed some German musicians at a school all the way from age 4 to age 24, so 20 years. After that 20 years, he went to revisit them, and they kept logs of how often they practiced, when and why and how. And he differentiated into 3 camps. 1, the guys that turned out to more into international soloists, 2, orchestral players, and 3, teachers. The international soloists had achieved over 10,000 hours of practice in that time. This is where this mythical 10,000 hours comes from. It's not mythical, it's actually proven. The orchestral players, around 8,000 to 9,000 hours. The teachers, 4,000 to 5,000 hours. Okay, so this isn't a spurious fact that you found from the internet, 10,000 hours. It is a proven psychological fact. But what is more important, it isn't the hours spent, it's the type of practice carried out. Okay, and this is purposeful practice. So I've done a quick thing. I've been driving cars for 30 years. If I do 10,000 miles a year, roughly at 30 miles an hour, I've achieved 10,000 hours of practice. Am I a world-class driver? No, I am not. I'd like to think I'm a decent driver, but I ain't world-class. Okay, so it's not necessarily the amount, it's the type. So purposeful practice. What is purposeful practice? Okay, this is actually a proper sum that someone's done, and it's P2 plus 4%. Okay, what is P2? P2 is purposeful practice plus 4%. What's 4%? If your comfort zone is that level point of 0, 4% is you achieving 4% more than you need to. Okay, so if we've got order and chaos, order is this point that we know, the stuff that we can do as horn players, and we're trying to reach outside that into the chaos zone by 4%, no more, just a little bit, but we're continually stretching what we can do every single day. And that's what I try to do. It might not be it certainly won't be when I do my warm-up. That's just me warming up, getting ready. But the next part, I will push myself, and you're not aiming for stratospheric levels. I'm not just going to get seagull out and going to try and smash myself. That's not going to work. It'll just have a detrimental effect to me. And this little fella will come out again and start complaining. We don't want that. Okay. Moving quickly on. I want to talk briefly about Sir Dave Brailsford, and then we're going to go into some goal setting, and then we're going to go into some actual practice techniques. Dave Brailsford, I think very inspirational for me. His time at Team Sky, Team Ineos and the Great British Cycling Team. You can argue that he turned that cycling team into the best sports team the world has ever seen. Why? He looked for 4 things within that team. He didn't look for superstars. Okay, if you think he did, go and check him out on YouTube. I can guarantee He wasn't interested in talent. He was absolutely interested in 4 things: commitment, ownership, responsibility, and excellence. What does this mean to us as musicians? Commitment first. How committed are you to playing? And this isn't a binary question. This isn't yes or no. Should be on a sliding scale. I am going to be more committed than someone who is my age but is an amateur player. Why? Because it's my job. I need to be more committed. Someone who's 16 and striving for music college is going to be more committed than someone that's 16 and that's just wants to play as an amateur. Okay? Define how committed you are and really seek to keep that commitment going. And what's important is not motivation, but the attitude that you bring to your practice every day. Bring that positive attitude. You have a direct choice in altering that. If you do that, you'll be a better player. Next, ownership. Now, no matter who you are, it's really important that you take ownership of what you do in your playing. What does that mean? It could be an easy buzzword just to put out. It's not. As an older player who is a pro or certainly gets paid to do the job that I do and know and love, take ownership of what you do. I have to. So 90% of my practice time will be me. I take ownership of that. 10% I will occasionally go and get lessons. Why? Because it's important to get feedback. There's a great term called the feedback loop, and it's important to get that feedback loop going around yourself, okay? Learning what works, what doesn't work, how to make it better. Take ownership. Even if you are a young player, please don't just listen to what a teacher says, question them. And it's not about being disrespectful, it's about you getting some knowledge, asking, really question that knowledge all the time, get something back from yourself. Next, responsibility. It might be that you are committed, you have taken ownership. Are you really responsible for the way that you make music every day? How responsible are you? Do you do the hard yards? Okay? Do you play your horn for an hour? Fine. What else do you do? Do you bother to do your long notes? Do you bother to do your low notes? Do you do your flexibilities every day? Do you really try to achieve that purposeful practice, raising yourself from that zone, adding straight into the chaos zone and adding that 4%? Are you that interested? If not, I suggest you try to be more interested. That responsibility is super, super important. Lastly, excellence. Note at this point, I do not say perfection. We're not striving for perfection. Perfection is an unattainable goal that no one really wants or cares about, okay? If you're aiming for perfection, throw it out the window. Look for excellence. What does that mean? Excellence is you doing the best that you possibly can do. My excellence is better from someone else's excellence. It doesn't matter. If you play a piece of music and in that piece of music you split 36 notes, I don't care. But I want you to split only 35 the next time and 34 the time after that. That is striving for excellence. Marginal gains, just like Dave Brailsford and the Team Ineos, Team Sky guys. That's what they're after. 1% each time. Strive to be 1% better. And that's all it is. Concentrate on those little things all the time and you will, ladies and gentlemen, improve. I want to talk quickly about goal setting. So we use a good method at the School of Music called the GROW method. So that's goals, reality, options and will. So what I'd like you to do is have a think about goals, reality, option and will. Goal is you setting a goal for yourself and try and set 3, a short, a medium and a long-term goal. Once you've set those, now a short-term goal will be things that you need to improve before your next session with your teacher. Medium goal, maybe by next year, so perhaps the next grade that you're after, and goal 3 will be a longer term goal. Okay, so longer term goals more important for younger people. For me, I've got to stay on top of my game, and mine will be generally more short, medium term goals. Yours will tend to be longer goals. Please do that. What's next, really important, is reality. Where are you now? This is the point where you need to get involved. That point where you get involved is you getting your mobile phone out and recording yourself. Now play something really, really easy. 16 bar phrase, 32 bar phrase, keep it under a minute. And I don't want you to do any rehearsal. and I don't want you to do any editing. I just want you to get your phone out, put it on video, video yourself, and see what comes out. Okay? What we're doing is establishing a baseline. I then want you to get a practice diary out. At that point, I want you to write down what your low note is, lowest usable note, your highest usable note. Now, I can play a super F on my horn if I want. It doesn't mean I can use that every day of the week. I can't. Okay, my usable note at the moment is probably a B flat B. Why? Because I've been doing a lot of low practice. That's fine. As soon as I know we're back at work and we've got some concerts on, I will change the practice that I've been doing to reincorporate that. But for you, that reality, that setting of a baseline is super, super important. And remember, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. So don't keep looking at superstars. Don't keep looking at Frank Lloyd, great though he is, and an absolute legend. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is, please, today. Next, on the grow, so we've done goal, reality, we're on options now. On your options are to do with what your goal is. So you've set yourself a short-term goal of getting this piece better. It might be that you're struggling with intonation. So we've set our baseline, we've videoed ourselves. It might be that some of your intonation's off. It might be that you're not centering notes. How are you going to get better at centering notes? So what I'm going to suggest now is, I suggest you can think about is you think as many options of getting better as you can. The will of grow, goal, reality, options, will is what will you do? So then you set yourself those goals and you put them in action. Okay, so enact those points. It's a really useful tool, ladies and gentlemen, for getting better. That short-term goal setting. So once you've videoed yourself, I want you to have a look at it, and I want you to give yourself 2 things that you need to improve. No more than 2. Keep them small. And I also want you to give yourself 1 thing that works, that you're happy with, that you think, no, that deserves a good pat on the back. And work on those tiny little things, okay? Keep them small. If you keep them small, it'll keep your chimp in check. And that's what your idea is. Going back a bit, I forgot to mention, if you don't know what, and this is an oft-used phrase, if you don't know what anxiety is in a certain session, if you get anxious playing something, bearing in mind that when your chimp creates, if you're putting it in an environment that upsets it, so something that's unusual, you're out of your comfort zone, your chimp will want you to make a decision on the fight, flight, fright scale. If you do nothing at that point, your chimp will release adrenaline into your system. When the adrenaline comes into your system, it will meet your negative emotional state, and that will create anxiety. Now, we get rid of anxiety by taking ourselves back a couple of steps. If we remove the anxiety, the negative emotional state, and that desire that we have to make that fight, flight, fright emotion, if we take ourselves before that, if we reason with our chimp, we can help eliminate or certainly subdue most anxiety. That's quite important. So with 10 minutes left to press, the last thing I want to talk about, please, ladies and gentlemen, is types of practice. I am slightly short on time, weirdly enough. Often people get stuck into practice and you'll see them playing really badly, or their practice will not be in any way structured, shape or form. I want to encourage you to do 3 things when you practice, or break your practice down into 3 distinct sessions. The first is conceptual, the second is technical, and the third is performance. If you start with conceptual, please, a lot of people concentrate only on the middle one, technicality. That's important, but these 2 either side are far, far, far more important. Firstly, conceptual. So when you're looking at a piece of music, if it's a piece of Mozart, start listening to Mozart if you've never heard of Mozart. So the way that I would attack Mozart 3 second movement will be vastly different from the way I start the opening of Strauss 2. Get that sound in your head. Start thinking about the things you need to think about. Put in those phrase marks. Conceptualize the ideas you have on your head and mark it down in your parts. Super important. Once you've got that, you stick by it. You don't say emotion comes from the chimp and I'll just keep emotive. That doesn't work. Have a plan, stick by it. That's conceptual playing. So please mark your parts really well. Please do your homework. Secondly, technical. We've talked about technical in as far as we've talked about the goal setting. So really break things down into very short little passages and work on, once you've videoed yourself, please keep videoing yourself, it's super important. 2 things. Always pick those little 2 things and congratulate yourself for 1 thing. Once you've done that, we need to move on to performance. Now I am aware time is short, so we're going to have to crack on quicker than I would like to on this. Performance anxiety normally becomes because your chimp has been moved from that nice place of order into a place of chaos. That place of chaos, we've got to get used to operating within, okay? We can't just operate in order all the time. If we operate in order all the time, when you put yourself out there, when you're at the top of the Albert Hall or wherever you are going to be, your chimp will come out and it will punish you severely. So please get out of order, get out of that safe space that you possibly have and just push yourself. Remember that 4%. You don't need to go the hard yards into far away. You just need to push yourself slightly further. Keep recording yourself. Is it getting better? Once you've recorded yourself once, record it again. Are you making the same mistakes? If you are, take yourself back from the performance mode back into the technical mode. Okay, we can do that. We can revert back and forward. Start adding people in. Start with a friend, a family member, 1. Add 2. Build it up. So many people miss this performance aspect out. All they do is the technical hard yards and expect just to be able to perform. Ladies and gentlemen, it won't work, okay? Make yourself perform for people. Start with 1, add more, but be happy with yourself being video recorded first. Learn to enjoy the things that the sounds that you make, the music that you make. That is super, super important, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming near to the end of our session. I've had to skip on a massive amount. I was going to play some Vern Reynolds for you. Unfortunately not. There might be another time. Are there any questions from anyone, please? No, well, I hope you've all had a great time. I've enjoyed delivering this live feed for you. Stay safe, everyone, and look after yourselves. And I've had a lovely hour. Okay, take care.